Hello PLO Order, another video, another topic, and this time it's 3betting deep. Especially 3betting 200 pp's deep when we have forward equity with the 3bet and when we don't have forward equity with the 3bet. And I'm going to explain in a bit what that actually means. But first we set up the framework. What are the things we're working on with today? And the situation is 5 max 200 pp's deep. And the reason why it's 5 max and not a 6 max is that a 5 max sim is a bit lighter, it's easier to make, and to remove that forward equity pre-flop, you have to do it manually. And every additional player makes it exponentially more different kinds of situations that we can have pre-flop. So let's say that for 5 max I have to remove 50 different calls. Then if I add one more player, then I have to remove 300 different calls more. So, or it might be even more, not sure, but I know that for 6 max it's way harder than 5 max. And with 5 max, in a 6 max under the gun and middle position, the strategy is quite similar for those, both of the other positions. So with 5 max, we'll have the same patterns, same strategies, same tendencies. That's why we stick to 5 max here. And I created two sims on Solver. One is normal 5 max 200 pp sim, and the other one is the same sim, but pre-flop opener never folds to 3bet if it's a heads up pot. If there's 3bet and cold call, it does, or if there's a call and squeeze, then there's some folds to 3bets, but versus one opponent, never fold to 3bet. And we are interested in heads up situation anyway. And reason is, real life on the tables, on the small stakes, you see people calling 3bets with king 4 deuce. You see people calling 3bets with 8-5 4 deuce rainbow, whatever. So there's a lot of players who call 3bet always because they want to hit the flop. Then there are players who fold a lot to 3bets and everything in between. But when you know how you adjust when someone calls 3bets with almost any hand, then you can set the perfect strategy when you are playing. And that's why I made those things. And oh boy, there's a lot of players who doesn't fold to 3bets. And if you just use solver 3betting strategy, it's very far from optimal. And it's good to understand also when we want to compare two strategies, like what we have here, with forward equity, without forward equity, then it's important that you change only one thing, because then you can see the effect of the one thing. I also have 100 pp sims for the same stuff, normal and without forward equity. And let's say I would compare 100 pp normal 5 max sim to 200 pp 5 max sim without forward equity. There would be two different things. There would be bigger stack size and there would be no forward equity. So then if I have an output that, okay, this change, I don't know which one is the cause, 200 pp or the lack of forward equity. So that's why it's important to change only one thing so you know what causes the differences, if there's any. And our situation is button versus middle position. And in 5 max, middle position is the under the gun. So it's the first position that opens, cutoff folds, we are on the button. Just a second. All right. For comparison, when we are 100 big blinds deep, then the 3bet drops from 6.2 to 4.8 on the button if we have forward equity or we don't. So the first number is if we have forward equity, so the normal amount, how much button opens in 5 max versus middle position. And the 4.8 is how much we 3bet if we don't have forward equity. So solver drops some of the lower hands from the range, and we covered that one. That's not a new stuff. But when we are 200 pp's deep, we can see the same pattern. Average 3betting percentage drops from 75 to 6.5. So it's pretty much almost the same trend. It doesn't drop as much as 100 big blinds deep, but you can see that it's not very big difference of how much it drops. But the first thing is that if you know that someone calls 3-bets with any hands, the first thing is that we don't increase the 3-bet. We think, okay, he calls with any kind of trap, I can 3-bet with wide range. That's not the way to adjust. So that's the thing that we take away from that trend. On the small blind, either case, 100 pp, 200 pp deep, fold equity, no fold equity, the 3-bet percent doesn't change versus early position open. It's very tight range, so that doesn't change. And on the big blind, the trend is that the 3-bet goes up a little. But you can see that 2.6 is a damn strong range and tight range. So it goes up to 3.5, not that heavily. We don't go bananas. But of course, out of position is different. Lower SPR favors the out of position player a bit more. And that's why out of position from the big blind, we 3-bet slightly more when we don't have fold equity. But especially in position, no. And that's for 200 pp deep. And 100 pp deep, both 3-bet slightly less without fold equity. On the small blind, it doesn't really change. It's virtually a very small amount, and it might be just the difference in how the sim is converged. But 100 pp deep, big blind, small blind virtually have the same 3-betting range. When we are deep, big blind 3-bet slightly less, but nothing too alarming. And if you wonder, okay, what if it's the cutoff that opens, the same trend is there. The numbers are slightly different, but it's the same trend. In position, 3-bet slightly less. Deep, out of position, big blind, 3-bet slightly more. And if button opens, then the blind strategy is pretty much same whether we have fold equity or not. Of course, deep or not changes, but when we are deep, whether we have fold equity versus button or not doesn't really change. And we shouldn't have too much fold equity anyway, being out of position. So now the question is, what has changed? And we're going, we're going to slightly overlap 100 pp deep versus 200 pp deep, because that's also one thing that we want to discuss. So there's kind of two narratives going on. One is 100 pp versus 200 pp deep, and fold equity and no fold equity. But if you have seen the stats and data from 100 pp situation, the thing is that when we 3-bet less, we pretty much remove the ace with 3-card rundown of middling cards like ace, 7, 6, 5, double suited. Those are the hands we remove from the 3-betting range, and that tightens it up a little. So pretty much the bottom of the range. The hands that are dominated the most are removed. But let's go and explore how do we change our 3-betting game when we are 200 pp deep compared to 100 pp deep. That's probably the more interesting part. And one of the biggest differences when we are out of position is pocket aces. The thing is that in position, we 3-bet most aces, even deep. That doesn't change. We don't slow play aces in position, just fire it up. But out of position, when the playability is even worse when we're out of position, then 100 pp deep from the blinds, 3-bet is around 76 to 90% of times, and that's the range of those four sims. 100 pp with fold equity, without fold equity, 200 pp deep with fold equity, without fold equity. So we have four sims, and the range of whether we 3-bet aces from the blinds versus early position open is from 76 to 91. And if you want to know on which sim it's 76, on which situation 91, we're not going too deep on that because this is still going to be somewhat short video, not 1 hour. You could easily make 2 hours of stuff. I'm just saying, if there's something you want to know, like if you want to know when it's 76, when it's 91, we have the Discord. I have the Sims. We combine those, ask and you shall receive. So if you want any deeper information on any of these things here on this video or any other, then just ask and discuss. But if I would explain every possible thing, this would be a 4-hour video and still would miss something. But it's just the comparison that pocket aces is 3-bet quite often, 76 to 91% of times out of position. Remember, out of position. When we're deep, it's 41 to 60. So you can see that there's a significant drop in 3-betting aces. Average from 85 to 50. So there's a lot more calling with try aces than when we are 200 pips deep. So that's the first thing. 200 pips deep, less aces. And from big blind, 200 pips deep, it's 41. Just an example, normally. And if we don't have the fold equity, it's 52. So those are the lowest numbers. So normally 200 pips deep, when we have aces on the big blind, we 3-bet only 40% and call with pretty much 6%. So 3 out of 5 times we just call with aces. And if we don't have the fold equity, we 3-bet slightly more, half of them, but same kind of trend. So way more slow playing deep out of position. And it makes sense because if we think about the low SPR situation, we want to flop strong hands on the flop so we can get the money in. And pocket aces often has good equity on the flop, but they have bad equity on the river unless you hit the board. And the deeper the stacks are, the higher the chances we have to play turns, we have to play rivers. So try pocket aces on most flops, we can get it in. And it's not a horrible play. But we can't get it in on all runouts on any river, turn and river situations. So we want to 3-bet more hands that have a bit more playability instead of flop equity. And the shorter the stacks are, more we want to have flop equity, and we don't really care for turn and river playability that much. So another thing that has changed, so pocket aces is definitely one change. Second class of hands that is changed quite a lot is 2 pairs. And now it's 2-pair hands without aces. Of course, because aces with another pocket pair is already included in pocket aces. So these are 2-pair hands without aces. And the thing is that button versus middle position, 200 pips deep, as it says here. Pay attention. Button versus early position open, we 3-bet 60% of our 2-pair hands. And we call with 32%, so folding only 8%, so the crappiest rainbow ones. But virtually we don't fold 2 pairs, and we 3-bet majority of them. And then the crappy ones, we just call. Back. And if opponent never folds, we 3-bet 40%, 39 to be precise, and call 36. So you can see that when we don't have fold equity, it's funny that suddenly we start to fold more. And then we would fold 25%. And that's pretty weird. I think that might be an issue with the sim. Didn't check it, but it sounds weird because, well, the middle position is actually opening slightly more if he doesn't fold the 3-bets, because then cutoff and button 3-bets less, which means that the other gun can open slightly more. But it would be weird if that alone would make it that instead of folding 8%, we are suddenly fold 25%. Well, in reality, I would think that it's more closer that the calling percentage just goes up. We don't 3-bet all of those, but still, you can see that when we are 200 pips deep, whether we have the fold equity or not, we 3-bet a lot of 2 pairs, and 100 pips deep, we really don't. We call with most of our 2 pairs, and 3-betting only the higher connected double-suited ones. So very clear trend and change in strategy when we get deeper stacks. And then from the small blind versus that early position open, we 3-bet 41 and call 21. So we defend most of our double paired hands. And without fold equity, now we 3-bet 54 and call with 14. So we play around the same amount of hands, but we 3-bet slightly more. But instead of just hitting focus on the exact percentage, you can see the pattern here that when we get deeper, 2 pair hands is played more aggressively. And I was wondering what is the reason. And I think one reason is definitely board coverage, because the deeper we are, the more you want to have board coverage to minimize the possible flops where opponent can just force you to fold too big portion of your range, or you would need to make drawdowns with weaker hands to balance it. That might be the one reason. And also deep, we definitely want to have heads up pot with 2 pairs instead of multi-way pots. That might be definitely one reason. And from the big blind versus the middle position, 3-bet 40, call 50 around-ish. And without fold equity, once again, 3-bet goes up. So you can see the same trend with double pairs, that what we have here is with aces out of position, we 3-bet less. And then with 2 pairs out of position, then if we don't have, I'll get back. With aces, we 3-bet it less. And here we can see that if we don't have fold equity, we start to 3-bet more. So, and out of position, same with the aces, we 3-bet slightly more if we don't have the fold equity. And the overall trend is that we 3-bet more everything out of position if we don't have fold equity. Same here. So if you're wondering, should we 3-bet more double pairs in position or out of position without fold equity, then yeah. And you can see that if we have fold equity, then we 3-bet more in position double pairs. Without fold equity, we 3-bet more out of position. So that's definitely a trend that you can get up. And then the last thing that I noticed is pocket kings. And there's some differences. 200 pips deep, button versus middle position, the same situation. Pocket kings is bet around 15.6% of times. But if opponent doesn't fold to 3-bets, then it goes up to 37, which is more than twice. So that's a very big increasement. Instead of calling with kings, we start to 3-bet kings with high frequency. And here's the funny thing. Pocket kings without ace is normally 3-bet just 1% or even less. So virtually we don't 3-bet kings without an ace 200 pips deep in position. If opponent overcalls our 3-bets, we start to 3-bet almost 1/3 of our kings. So that's definitely pretty heavy deviation based on the fold equity or not. Double suited kings goes up from 9% to 7%. And it means that double suited kings is very often just called, and now almost all of them are 3-bet if we don't have fold equity. So with fold equity, we don't 3-bet double suited kings. And if we have fold equity, we 3-bet most of them. And then what this explanation mark dollar $TP means, a double suited kings without two pairs. So just double suited kings that is not king 10, then king 9. Because a lot of the double suited kings 3-betting is double suited double pairs with pocket kings. So if we don't have a double paired, then it goes up from 3 to 56%. So still 3-betting most of the double suited kings. And if we're single suited, the funny thing is we don't have single suited pocket kings that we would 3-bet normally. But if we don't have that fold equity, the opponent is overcalling, we 3-bet 1/4 of those. And without double pairs, it goes from 0 to 15. So we have some single suited non-double paired pocket kings that we want to 3-bet. And if we compare to 100 pp's deep, then king without an ace, I mean, yeah, these hands are king without ace. All of these numbers 0. Single suited kings, it means it doesn't have ace. Then 100 pp's deep, we don't 3-bet pocket kings without ace, even double suited. We just don't. And if we don't have fold equity, still we don't. So you can see that 200 pp's deep, pocket kings is the hand category that is changed the most. For rundowns, I checked all the rundowns, 4-card rundowns. Didn't check those capped. I just check out the 4-card rundowns of different ranks, high ones, medium, low ones, and couldn't really see any difference or significant differences whether we have fold equity or not. Or even a trend that 200 pp's deep, those would be heavily 3-bet instead of not. It's just, it followed the overall trend, so nothing new about those. So it's mostly these pocket kings that is changed the most, and two pairs that is changed the second most. So those are the hand categories that we should be really focusing on our 3-betting game when stacks start to get deeper and understand how should we play them. And the thing is that I'm not going too deeply. It's tempting to open up the solver here and just start to explore everything, but that would mean that the video is too long, and the idea is to try to keep these weekly videos for order in 15 to 30 minutes. Sometimes I just can't do it. It goes over that, but I'd like to keep them short. But if you have any questions, you want to know more, something bothers you, or whatever, we have the Discord for that. There's a PLO strategy discussion, make a question, and of course I will answer. And if there's something we need to explore more, we can do study streams. So it's not that I'm holding back information, I'm just trying to keep it compact and relevant. And then if someone wants to know more, then we dig deeper. So this is a starting point. We set up some trends. Now we need to explore how actually do it. So feel free to open up the discussion on Discord. I hope you enjoyed this scratch on the surface, how our 3-betting range changes when we get deep. And I will see you on the Discord, on the streams, and on the next video. Stay safe in the galaxy.